4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. This is a call to order for the Teaching and Learning Committee. The time is now 6:09 p.m. In attendance, we've got committee members Joseph Lombard, committee member Sybil Allen, board member Albert Brennahan, Carrie Ramanowskis, Dr. Melissa Jenkins. Who else we got here? Superintendent Testani, Mr. Arnold, Mr. D. Young, and Ms. Carrie Ramanowskis, I think I said that. Okay, and Ms. Vajay and Mr. McLeod as well. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes dated January 19th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second? Does anybody, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item up on the agenda is the special education update. I believe Mr. Arnold will be taking that away. Please proceed. If you're proceeding, Mr. Arnold, you may be on mute.
Sorry, I'm going to start with this page right here. I keep getting calls from this committee. So we've put 2 people out of district since the last time we met.
Mr. Arnold, you said you're starting with a sheet, or are you?
Yeah, this sheet right here.
We don't see nothing. I don't see anything anyway. Does anybody else see? No. Nothing is on the screen, Mr. Arnold.
You can't see this?
No, sir.
Okay. The first sheet's going to start out of district placements.
All right. I guess we could all follow along on our packet if everybody could back it up.
So for out of district placements, we've had 2 since the last time we've met. 1 in December and 1 in January, and they've gone out of district. Beneath that is the summary of out of district. We have the university school. We actually have 43 seats there, but we only have 24 filled. So that has a 55.81% vacancy. And we want to fill that up though. That's a good school. This DRN has stayed the same, 39. Out of districts, so those are state approved schools like cooperative ed services, area cooperative educational services, those places went up 2 to 254. So a total of 317 out of district placed students right now. So up 1 from last time we talked. Then I put in there the charter schools. We have a lot of charter schools that we are servicing, 429 special ed students. And I just put in there because I wanted to look at the common ground isn't really bad. There's 3 kids there and we have 1 of them special ed, but I think a couple of the other schools are higher than what we are. You know, so I think we have 16 point something percent and they have 21 and 18. And those are, they just get push in and pull out. That's all they get. And they need like a self-contained class and they have to come back to their district school. So that was a little bit alarming to me. And then we've had 1 due process complaint in January. We stopped it before it went to due process and a kid did go out of district. And then we've had, let's see, 3 complaints in January and 2 complaints in February so far. The next page, we just finished this Monday. So on 10/1/2020, there are 42 special ed students in Bridgeport, down from last year where we had 4385. And then, so we did the initial timeline, and so far this year, we have 115 kids on the list that we've uploaded. If you go the next slide, the next paragraph down, we have 111 reevaluations we still owe from last year, but we're down from 299 to 111. We have no initials from last year. We have 943 current reevals, and we were at 1401. And then for the initials of the current ones, we have 243 for a total of 1297. You have questions about any of this stuff? I mean, this is the next page is the this was last year's evals, and no, this is, hold on a second. This is the CDAC. So this was just done Monday. We have 42, but and you can see on here like what designation each kid has. 215, 16 intellectual disabilities, 26 hearing impaired, 246 speech and language identified people, and you can just go right through it. And then the last page is this is the indicator 11 report from last year that we finalized. We didn't test too many kids because we did get out in March. And we didn't go back to school, so I think this year we're probably going to be a lot higher than this, but we'll see. So. Questions?
Yes. Can we go back up to the charter schools?
Yep.
And the percentages. All the charter school district, all the charter school special ed are in districts.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
All the charter school students in district?
No, some of them are in New Haven, some of them are in Norwalk. There's no more in Stamford. So we go from, I think, Norwalk all the way to New Haven. So.
For the charter schools?
Yep. So we have kids that go to Amistad, which is in New Haven, and we have kids that go to like the Common Ground High School, which is in Norwalk. Not too many kids go there. 3 of them go there. 1 of them is special ed, so that's why it's a high number, high percentage, I should say.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how often are these special ed students pulled out of pull in, pull out?
How are they?
About what portion of their school day?
So some of them do longer days than Bridgeport does. Like I know Achievement First does 40 hours a week. We do 32.5 or 33 at the high school. And like Bridge Academy goes our length of time. So I think the most we have is 41.5, and that's Amistad. And then the least we have is our schedule.
I'm just wondering what percentage of the day, like a special ed students, would have a pullout.
So
an hour at a time, it's 4 hours.
Different for everybody, but at the charter schools, most often they push into the classrooms.
Oh,
they really don't even pull out. So that's why if you're there and you're not, and you need a more structured environment, you come back to your neighborhood school. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering also. I'm also wondering about. You said there's an increase in the charter school special ed.
Yeah, I mean, one of them added a whole high school and didn't tell me or us, and I mean, there's a lot at charter school. So we have, I think. Let me just find the total number we have. We have 3620 in the charter schools now, and of those 3620, 429 are special ed. So that's a lot, and we do those PPTs from our office. So
yeah, I'm just wondering about that and why that is, because it actually changes the narrative that's been in my mind for quite a while about charter schools vis-a-vis special ed students and such. It's very interesting. Do we know why? Is it because there's been more focus on the charter schools and special ed, or
I mean, I think
identifying more.
I'm pretty sure that 2 of the schools I referenced are identifying more, because then they get more money from this. You know, they get more money if they identify more students. Some of them have an hour. The charter schools, and they special ed kid, and they get an hour. So, but
Right. So wait, okay, I'm trying to understand this, okay, because the charter school gets direct funding for a special ed student in addition to us having to provide the services.
So we send over speech, OT, social work, psychology. We do all those in kind. So they don't charge us for that, but we pay them for their special ed teachers. So, and like, you know, Great Oaks does 35 hours, you know, stuff like that. So.
Okay, that's just something to think about, and I guess keep an eye on, I suppose. What other questions I have? And where are we till last year as far as total out of district placements? I don't know if you said that. I might have missed it.
No, I think I don't have the data from last year, but we were at 319 in November of this year. I could look at the data and send you guys an email.
Yeah, I just want to know if we're up, down, stable.
I think we're kind of stable right now.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I have. Mr. Lombard, do you have any questions?
Yes. What did you say is our percentage?
So I think we're at right now 16.2% of our that's even from 3 years old to 21 have IEPs.
Okay.
I think
so. This is like.
Yeah.
This is at like 11.8%. I was just to divide the numbers. So
yeah.
Overall, they're at about 11.8%. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. Allen, any questions?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Benahan, I'll see your face. Mr. Benahan, you still here? I believe we lost Mr. Benahan. Okay. Let me make sure Mr. Benahan's gone. Yeah, Mr. Benahan's gone. Okay. Mr. Arnold, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I got the next agenda item. It will be cultural relevancy check, language, arts, and literacy curriculum. And that will be Dr. Jenkins. Take it away, ma'am.
Okay, good evening again. Today I will be presenting an overview of culturally responsive teaching within the ELA and literacy curriculum. And I shared with you this framework, Ready for Rigor, and I will be using that framework as a tool to guide the review of culturally responsive practice or culturally responsive teaching in ELA. So I would like to start by stating that culturally responsive teaching is not a set of engagement strategies. It's a mindset, a way of looking at the world. And so we as a district have been working to develop awareness in regards to our culturally and linguistically diverse population. During this school year, some of the strengths for our culturally relevant teaching has been around our teachers and staff, administrators being reflective practitioners through SEL, SLOs for teacher evaluation. We've been working to develop a mindset for working with culturally and linguistically diverse students through reading the book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammond. Carrie Ramanuskis, our SEL coordinator, has provided some implicit bias training, and there's been ongoing social, emotional, professional development to develop an awareness of what culturally responsive teaching is. I believe based on this framework, some of our next steps will be professional development on how the brain learns to read and how the brain responds to feelings of safety and feelings of threat. So we make sure we understand how to create the environment to support our children within the pandemic and beyond. I think another next step is explicit understanding of individualism and collective learning strategies. Some students learn best, maybe working independently at times, but many students learn better working in cooperative groups and working in collaboration and recognizing when one strategy should be employed over another and based on who our students are as individuals. And then a final step could be know and own our own cultural lens. We all have bias, and our bias usually comes through our own identity, becoming more aware of who we are as individuals and how our own awareness can support or may not support the children we're working with on a daily basis, as well as staff. One of the second points is about developing learning partnerships from the Ready for Rigor framework, creating learning partnerships based in safety and care, and not just physical safety, emotional safety, and basing those learning partnerships on rigor and support. Currently, our teachers strive to build trust and rapport with our children, and we work to provide them with actionable feedback to support their development. And based on our social and emotional school climate survey, the majority of students perceive a level of trust in student-teacher relationships. 93% of students in grades 3 through 5, 91% of the students in grades 6 through 8, and 89% of students in grades 9 through 12. And each one of these percentages is an increase over, I believe, a 4 to 5 year period in time. In regards to supporting learning partnerships in ELA, I think that we should strive to build explicit learning partnerships grounded in clear feedback about learning goals with concrete steps for improvement. After the pandemic, we have not only the achievement gap, but the COVID gap to improve upon. So the partnerships around rigor and support and explicit goal setting will be necessary, and to also support productive struggle. Some of the concepts and texts that children read may be challenging, but in learning partnerships with children, building alliances, we're able to recoup and regain from the COVID loss, as well as the initial achievement gap we were working to close. The book, Culturally Responsive Teaching by Zaretta Hammond, also talks about information processing, and that means to provide learning, cognitive routines to improve independent learning. We want to make sure that children have routines that allow them to learn concepts such as letters and sounds and phonics, as well as developing their oral language and comprehension. Routines are embedded in the program that are learned and will carry students across school years, grades K through 6 right now with Reading Wonders. In the past, middle and high school teachers had professional development on a close reading routine to help students learn how to read complex text. And most of our ELA texts reflect the diversity of the student population. In our current Reading Wonders program, K6, the texts range from African American to Brazilian American, Filipino ethnicity, Alaskan, the diversity is wide and deep, Native American. So students do see themselves as well as other ethnicities and cultures within the text. This is a strength within the ELA content area. For next steps in developing cognitive routines to support students' information processing with text, create opportunities for students to work in collaboration and partnerships in class, and provide more opportunities for project-based learning, which will support students in being more self-directed, and it would allow them to develop their own academic identity because there's choice in project-based learning. And this fourth category in the Ready for Rigor framework, seeing the classroom environment as the second teacher. We currently have strengths in our district in this area with routines such as the mood meter, review of the class charter from the ruler approach, recitation of common poems or positive behavior supports. And most of the schools have received training on restorative circles. Many classrooms use short inspirational videos from the Wonders program or TED Talks or uplifting poetry like the Amanda Gorman poem, The Hill We Climb, to teach students that the environment is intellectually safe and to give them voice and choice. At our high schools and middle schools, we have SEL ambassadors. So to not just make the classroom about visual images that reflect children, but we want the classroom, the actions of the classroom, the environment, the human environment in the classroom to be a second teacher. In this area, we want to provide students with opportunities to share their views and opinions about the classroom culture and community, not only through a survey time at the beginning and the end of the year, but we want to invite them to share how they feel about their classroom and community and have ongoing dialogue with the teacher. And we want to make sure there are also different talk structures in class, such as a chalk talk where children may write on paper rather than always talking, or a World Cafe where they move around to different groups to hear the opinions and views of others. And in summary, we want to build the learning capacity of the student with affective, emotional, social emotional, and cognitive supports that students bring with them. So culturally responsive teaching is not just a set of engagement strategies. It's a mindset, a way of looking at the world. And ELA supports that through literature, through dialogue, through honoring the students' voice and choice in the class. We want to encourage that learning partnership between the teacher and student to make sure there's safety and care, rigor and support in the classroom. We want to make sure students have a variety of cognitive routines to move toward independent learning. And we always want to recognize the classroom environment as the second teacher. Any questions?
Yes, very good. Dr. Jen. Just basically one question.
Yes, sir.
Implicit bias ratings. About what percentage of people I don't know. I'm sorry. What percentage of our ELA staff are taking in the implicit bias trainings?
Mr. Sokolovich, may I ask for a helping hand from Carrie Ramanuskis? I was glad she was on the agenda. I did prep with her in advance.
Thank you. Yeah.
Carrie.
Go ahead, Ms. Ramanuskis.
We've tracked number of participants in all our trainings. If you'd like me to look up the various SEL training components and the attendees over the course of the years. So these trainings aren't all new. So I can provide those training numbers if you're interested.
Yes, I'm interested, but the ultimate goal being that 100% of all our staff receive some sort of implicit bias training in the next year or so, because that's definitely is needed in some areas more than others. So the more we could get, the much better. I know it's not all in your control, but it's just out there for everybody on the call. Thank you.
Mr. Sokolovich, I will
yes,
say that as an executive director, and with the other executive directors, we're actually reading the book that I use the framework. So we are engaging in self-assessing our own bias and how we support the principals we work with, and we work to lead by example. So I will say that we're engaged in that ongoing training at all times, and I collaborate with Carrie frequently. At the beginning of the year, Carrie did facilitate for all middle school teachers work around social emotional learning. And I know that most of the teachers are on a journey to complete the ruler online training for this school year. And that has some social justice components embedded. So I think it's an ongoing process for us, but I will follow up with Carrie to get numbers as well.
Awesome, thank you. And who handles the basically general ed teachers like the K through 6 who don't? I mean, you handle the ELA portion, but who would handle like the trainings for like implicit biases and stuff like that?
I would think I would still collaborate with Carrie. So whatever Carrie is doing, I follow up with all of the principals that I support. And so I know that the other executive directors do the same thing. So for example, I can go on to the ruler dashboard and see who has completed their training among the schools that I currently support.
Okay.
So
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you can continue if you want to, if you have something else to say. You sure?
I'm good, Mr. Sokolovich. I'm good.
All right.
Mr. Sokolovich, just to add to your question, that we are in the process, Mr. Young, Carly, or Carrie, we're all in the process of planning a year's long worth of professional development that is set to begin and kicked off next month with our keynote speaker and diversity training with Dr. Derek Gay. And from there, we have some great ideas. Mr. Young and I met the other day in putting together a team of folks district-wide that will be able to support our schools and take this to the next level, because we know the need based on coming out of this pandemic is going to be great, and we need to be better prepared. Not to say that we haven't been doing a great job, but we know the need's going to be greater, and we have to be prepared to deal with it with a very succinct and focused plan. So.
Awesome. Yeah, and everybody's doing great, but some of these issues coming up, we can't have a program for issues that never came up before. So we got to create new programs and attack new issues. Mr. Lombard, do you have any questions?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Ms. Allen?
None as of now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Jenkins. I don't think Mr. Benahan made it back in. No. Okay. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and possible action on psychological and social emotional COVID-related impact on student learning. Now, that's a mouthful. I sent out an email. I'm going to read it for the benefit of the committee because they have no. I never sent this email out to the committee. I just want everybody on the same page. So, since the day of the pandemic, I've had this growing feeling about the negative impact COVID was having on our students. It began as what would be thought of as a short-term closure with minimal impact on a student's mental health. As the days dragged on, an alarm began to sound in my mind about the impact this was having. At first, it was as perceptible as a dog whistle, but now it has reached like a tornado-like volume. How are our children suffering? Make no mistake, our children, our staff, our parents are suffering from a trauma. It may not be the trauma in a traditional sense like the violence in our community that we're used to addressing, with inadequate resources due to underfunding, of course. But it is a trauma nonetheless. While the need for academic catch-up is real and needs to be addressed, we need to be just as mindful, if not more so, of the psychological and social damage that the virus has wrought upon our students. The impact will be both short-term and long-term. Some possible issues I've thought of, definitely not all inclusive, students losing loved ones without having the support of their peers that they would traditionally have is lost due to COVID. Students may be entering school in person for the first time in the second grade, and the lack of interpersonal skills learned in kindergarten will be lost. In-person students may be having fears daily. Remote
Can I
students
interrupt
may be
for a second? Can I interrupt?
Yes.
Can I interrupt? Because I think that, each of those key issues are important. So can we start with each issue and then discuss what plans we have for each? Because if you read them all, then those are several different topics. You know what I mean?
Oh,
it's like the first one you said, well, I didn't prepare each topic, but I can speak to each topic is what I'm saying. Right. Yes. I looked through them and
yeah, let me just
okay.
finish
Go ahead.
Because the other committee members haven't even heard this. All right, so,
gotcha.
And remote students under constant parental supervision may have issues once they're free of their parental supervision, and they might go wild. It's like, hey, I'm out of the house finally. In-person students used to small classrooms may feel overwhelming anxiety upon return to full in-person learning. Most students may feel overwhelmed at a return to in-person learning. There's no means by a comprehensive list. It's not meant to be. Some of these small problems, if they go unaddressed or undiagnosed, may lead to the need for more costly interventions in the future through special ed and increased IEPs. We as a district have been undersourced for decades, especially when it comes to the social emotional needs of our students. COVID has added to that, but has also created an opportunity to utilize one-time funding to address the current trauma like never before. Approaching these issues with intentionality can not only give us greater tools to address the psychosocial issues of COVID, but proper successful implementation could serve as an example of what a well-funded socio-emotional program could do and make for better advocacy for continued funding. Hopefully we could creatively leverage COVID dollars to address all traumas through creative district-wide initiatives. Okay, now Mr. Young. Right. Thank you.
Because all of the topics that you came up with were great, so I wanted to break some of them down. But I wanted to start with what's called chronic urban trauma, and then that's what a lot of our kids have been going through since the beginning, like even before COVID. It's called chronic urban trauma, where they have the violence, where they have seeing domestic violence or sexual abuse, all those type of things were already things that they were dealing with before, and now they're at home seeing it up front all the time, all day. So that could be an issue when they come back into school. So the first thing you talked about was students losing loved ones and having the support. We've always provided students with bereavement support in school and out of school. So the kids that are remote, we sometimes send people out to the home. Mr. Testani's even talked about going to homes and speaking with parents who've lost loved ones from COVID or any other shootings and all of those types of things. So we've always had a piece of that, but I think that what you're saying is that it's going to be a larger scale, and so we need to look at how we can broaden that scale so that we can have capacity. Some of these things we won't be able to do because they're so big, but we need to break them down into smaller parts. I don't want to take away from what Carrie was going to say, but I just think that these are a lot of different issues that we have different programs for that we're already doing certain pieces of. Carrie?
Yes. So that was a very comprehensive list, Joe, that you came up with. And just knowing already what programs we have in place and their purposes is very helpful in responding. Because just because we have a program within the district or we have resources doesn't mean they're disseminated to everybody or people know how to access them, where they lie. So we've definitely beefed up a lot of that process. But in terms of our BPS SEL initiative specifically, there are very specific program components. So the first is the ruler approach to help us build our emotional intelligence and our actual skills of recognizing, understanding, labeling, and expressing, regulating emotions effectively. We also have restorative practices, which is 80% of the time building relationships and then repairing harm when harm has been caused. That is utilized in academic instruction. It's utilized in conflict resolution. Also training around adverse childhood experiences and how to build resiliency in both young people and adults. That's another very important component of our overall initiative. Then building cultural competence and understanding of each other, and then anti-racist teaching practices, what that looks like, feels like, sounds like in a classroom setting. All of these are components of our overall initiative. And as the Bridgeport Public Schools, we have powerful partnerships that we've created to help us on that journey. Our SEL initiative lead agency is the Bridgeport Child Advocacy Coalition. That's a division of RIASAP. They actually just put on an amazing week-long summit devoted to social emotional learning and our various components of that. Shout out to all the board members who joined our our summit, and letting you know that we're not in this alone. In addition to our lead agency, BCAC, a division of RIASAP, we also have the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, who developed the ruler approach. We also have the Consultation Center at Yale to help make sure that our surveys are reliable, they're valid, we're asking questions, that have certain responses and information we want to gain from not only our faculty surveys, but then also our student surveys that we distribute, a school climate survey from grades 3 through 12. Some of the most recent question components are around cultural competency. We've gotten tremendous feedback and results from that, showing extremely positive trajectory of improvements. In fact, as soon as we got the results from Panorama, we met internally as a team in the superintendent's office to kind of dig in deeper, see where we're extremely successful, but then look at those areas where we can really target supports. In addition to that, we have a district-wide structure, which is incredibly important for sustainability, consistency, and rolling out with intentionality. So we have a core-based team that's made up of myself, our lead partners, the superintendent, and then we have a district-wide task force that includes our core team as well as district-level staff, school-based leaders or administrators, both head principals and vice principals. There are teachers that serve on that team, support service providers that serve on that team. We have parents at all 3 grade level bands that serve on that team. And then we gain input from our student ambassadors. So their feedback is also shared. We're looking for next year to have their actual voice where they're present, sharing it out of their own mouth instead of reading their responses that they've submitted to our committee. So that's a work we're working to expand. And then our various community agencies, Southwest and Optimus are also partners, our SEL initiative partners. And as everybody knows, they have school-based health clinics in a number of our schools. Their telehealth visits since the pandemic hit have actually increased services for not only our students in the Bridgeport Public Schools, but wraparound services for their families, which we've gotten tremendous feedback from parents, from students, and the community members in the uptick in terms of reaching out when they are struggling. In addition to our community, some other community partners we have at the table is CES. We have higher education members serving on our SEL task force. So it's a pretty comprehensive group. There are, I want to say 26 members of our task force that we meet every month We had been meeting prior to this COVID year every other month. Actually, last spring is when we moved to meeting every month because of the current situation that we're in. We recognized a need, and then we increased our meeting times. We leave those meetings with action steps, and then meet together to move our programming forward. In addition to our task force, every single school has a school-based, we refer to them as SEL teams. Some schools will call them SEL teams, school climate teams. Some have broken them up into ruler teams, restorative teams, cultural so they've expanded the level of participants, but every school has a minimum of 5 made up of a building administrator, whether it's the head principal or vice principal, clinical personnel, whether that's a social worker, a school counselor, or a school nurse, a school psychologist, and then in addition, 3 classroom teachers. We do ask that those are made up of sometimes classroom teachers, sometimes special education teachers, and a mix of them. So if you're in a pre-K through 8 building, you may have a middle school representative, you may have a special education provider in, that services grades 3 to 5, and then one of the lower grade teachers first, just so you have that voice and input from everybody to really make sure that we're addressing the needs on the ground. In addition to our adult teams made up of at least 5, and I say at least because most of our schools have expanded from those 5. Those 5 school-based teams receive district level training in restorative and all of the components that I identified before. And then as Dr. Jenkins referenced earlier, we have student SEL ambassador teams that have also received district-wide training. Joe, to your question before around building cultural competence, we've held events like the Human Library event, where all of our middle and high school ambassadors came to an event and they checked out people who were books, where the books were able to tell their story in a small group environment made up of 3 to 5 people and learn. Oftentimes our students, whether they're in high school, middle school, or lower grade, they think that adults, we're just born adults and everything comes to us and we have all this knowledge and information. And sometimes being vulnerable and opening ourselves up and sharing some of the challenges we've experienced and how we've overcome them create the biggest impact for our students. Because even though we might have I've definitely made mistakes in my life, and when they recognize that is part of life, and there are ways to gain support, to reach out to overcome those things. Nobody is alone. Sometimes we may feel that way, but we're not alone. Help is literally a phone call away, a Zoom call away, or I can text Dee right now and get some support. So there's always support out there, and knowing that deep inside when we may be feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, sad, depressed, isolated, making sure that they know everybody has experienced those feelings and being able to recognize them so to reach out to gain that support is incredibly important. And as you said, now more than ever, it has always been important, and we've been on our SEL journey that's been named and identified since it first started as a little kernel of initiative just at one pilot school in 2013, and has grown and built over the years to where we are now. In addition to the trainings that are purely in-house in the Bridgeport Public Schools, we also have the Parent Leadership Training Institute. It's typically when it's in person, it's a 20-week program. Now that it's a virtual program, it expanded to, I believe, 24 or 25, where we train groups of parents to build relationships with each other in the first 10 week of programming. And I'm minimizing the programming for simplicity purposes, but first 10 weeks is about relationship building, and then the last 10 weeks is about civic engagement, how to advocate for the needs that our community have, the needs that your particular children may have, or even if you don't have children in the system, advocating for our community. As Joe identified so correctly before, we've been understaffed and under-resourced for years. That is not okay. We are doing the best that we can. So I think in a nutshell, that shows some of what we're doing on our end as the BPS SEL initiative. D. Young had all of his social workers trained in culturally responsive teaching in the brain. One of our own in-house experts provided that training. Carly had 100% of her school counselors also trained. We were able to write and receive grants. So every attendee received a copy of the culturally responsive teaching in the brain that were distributed at those trainings. Alicia Robinson had her full arts, performing and visual arts department take multiple trainings where she's infused all of the SEL components when she's rolling it out to her department. So this work is very much on the move and making sure that we highlight the need for our students and their families and our staff members who are in front of our children every day, making sure that their social, emotional health and well-being are also top of our priority list. So if you have any specific questions around anything discussed, I'm more than happy to respond.
Yes, Mr. Young, how many psychologists and social workers do we have in the district?
I'm the director of social work, so I know exactly how many there are. There are 39. I don't know how many psychologists, but I believe it's comparable. I don't know if Rob is still on. He might know the exact number, but I believe it's like 37, 38. But either way, it's not enough. and I want to state that oh, go ahead.
Yeah, what's the optimal ratio of basically social workers to students? What would you say?
You want to know the real number? It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be.
Optimal ratio.
No, it's supposed to be for every 250 students you have, there's supposed to be a social worker. That's the United States wide number. So that's never going to happen. It's huge, yeah. But what I was going to say was that what Carrie was talking about, the macro sense of what we're doing, we still do the micro part. And Mr. Testani was great enough to develop a system where if something happens with a student, like any of the things you listed, we have an email exchange where we do it in real time, where we tackle that issue right away and work as a team to develop a system to work with that kid. So we are doing some things that you would know about that are like micro things that we're doing. But the macro things are important because it gives them the training so that when they're dealing with these cases, we can deal with them efficiently. I just wanted to put that out there.
And to add to what Dee said, that's also in terms of roles and responsibilities. I'm a content area teacher. I am not a social worker. And we need to make sure that we are all trained and recognize and understand how to deliver our content in a socially emotional, appropriate manner, how to build our own competencies, but also how to know when we need to call in an expert. So as a classroom content area teacher, I need to be able to know when to call and say, we need support, and have the expert handle what they are trained to do that is not a classroom teacher's area of expertise. It's all our responsibility to help support our students. And what I was talking about are universal supports. We do have some tiered intervention as part of that classroom teachers can be aware, but it is not crisis intervention team. That is Dee's domain.
That's me.
And right. And Mr. Young, what's the average salary of a social worker?
I would say 50 something in the school system, but outside of the school system is lower. So that's new people coming in, the average of people aging out. The middle would be 50 to 60.
It's about 85 to 90,000 on average with salary and benefits.
For all of the social workers together?
Yeah, I mean, if we, I know where Mr. Sokolovic's going. So if we double our workforce, which would get us to the ratio we need,
gotcha.
Probably another 40 social workers. So it would be about $3.3 million, which.
Oh, and that includes benefits. Okay, gotcha. Okay, I'm back in.
Yeah, I probably should have asked the question the way Mr. Testani put it.
See, I don't think in those ways. I don't think the math way. He thinks he has to think that way. I think about student ratio, but I'm glad that he clarified.
Yeah.
So if we did it right, Mr. Sokolovic, and we got all our numbers as terms of school social work and school counselors, we would have to pretty much double our workforce in those two areas to really service the kids properly. Because, I mean, even if we made a dent and went with 20 more social workers and 20 more school counselors, it would be much more conducive to the ratio. But again, they're both 250 to 1 is the ratio that is ideal and recommended nationwide.
Right. Yeah, I'm getting at all this because with the COVID relief funds coming in, that one of the expenditures categories could be the social emotional aspect and building upon that. I got kind of an idea in my head that maybe we could get, if not total saturation, maybe in our what would likely be the hardest hit schools and the hardest hit areas, something resembling maybe a community school with wraparound services. Because like SEL started with a germ of an idea, if we could show proper funding of social emotional learning, proper funding of after school activities, and a couple of concentrated areas, we probably know which schools we would probably focus on due to demographics and what have you. And if we could show marked improvement with these services there, we can make a great pitch for funding going forward to improve these programs around our whole district and maybe around the state.
Well, and that's what we were in the process, Mr. Young and I and a few others last winter before COVID. We were guests with communities in schools, and we went out and visited a school in Nevada. And we were impressed, extremely impressed. And we started to get that off the ground. We had a couple of schools identified, which would be models that we could show data and seek out additional funding. So our next idea now is to create what we call a family response center. And it will be similar where we can then gather data to show measurable growth. And I had that conversation today with some folks. We're going to float this idea by some external funders as well, so that we can sustain this beyond 2 years of federal funding.
Yeah, because definitely. Because I see we got a lot of seed money, not a lot of seed money in the big scheme of things, but it's like a one-time opportunity, and I'm worried, as we all probably know in this room, that these small what might be a small problem now might grow into a bigger problem later down the line and become, for the student, even a bigger emotional problem, and for the financial portion of it, even more expensive, costly special ed situation that we could get into.
And that's the exact conversation we had the other day, knowing that we cannot get into the academics if we don't address the social emotional needs of our students. And the social emotional needs are what's going to cause the pipeline to special education services, because children are going to be frustrated, children are going to act out, and the first inclination for many are going to be to get them to a PPT, get them placed in special education, and possibly out of my building. And that's not the way to approach this. This approach needs to be very supportive and understanding and caring, so that kids can get the support they need for them to be able to learn and grow. So that's going to be our approach here in Bridgeport. And that's the approach we feel is going to be most successful long term.
Yeah, definitely. I got this picture of a utopian school in my mind, where a kid goes to school. If he has a problem, he's got access to a social worker, maybe after school, where his parents could come, maybe attend a parenting class or what have you. And I don't know, it just seems like that's what this community needs, really, is just like real wraparound services and I want to try to leverage as much as possible. Like tutoring after school and all that. I mean, our schools are in use 8 to 9 hours a day, and then they're vacant for the other portion of the day. I think we could get more use out of them if we had the proper funding.
And Joe, just to build off of your idea of a community school, we have current social emotional learning funders at the table that have building blocks at one of our schools to help roll out just exactly that. A pilot social emotional learning community school with full wraparound services for the students and their families and community. So that has been a process that has been in development now. Mr. Testani, was that last winter, late winter?
Yes.
So there are not only educator buy-in from the district level, but also community members and SEL funders and partners that want to see us successful in this endeavor. So.
All right. Okay, very good. I'll just do one last comment. Is that about maybe 3 million and change for a full thing? That's about how much we would be losing in freeze of the ECS. And that would be services that could be paid for. All right, that's just an aside. Anyway, Mr. Lombard, any questions?
Yeah, I was actually just curious about the possible action, what you had in mind with that agenda item.
Well, I always like to leave possible action in case there's something I need to push through the board. If sometimes we get, if there's a program that we as a board like that maybe is not too favorable with the professionals, which it doesn't seem to be the case here, that we can say, if they say, oh, we don't want to expand nothing, no, we don't think that's a good idea, we'd rather put all the money to academics, I'd be like, Mr. Lombard, I think we need to discuss this as a board and have Mr. Testani take action, and then we would take action on the committee level and then push it to the full board for a vote, and then we would say we have to implement this program because it's a board directive, but since that's not the case, it's not going to be it. That's why it's always possible action. It's always good to have a possible action there. But I'm not seeking possible action now because it seems like we don't need to.
Okay. Okay.
Well, our SDL initiative would like to submit a resolution to the board. Should we submit it to this committee first? There's an International SEL Day on March 26th that we would like the board support in saying that that is a priority of the Board of Education. You don't need to answer now, but I'll submit it to, I just want to know the proper channel. Would it be the chairman on this committee first?
You said March 26th. I don't know. I wouldn't feel slighted if you bypass us, but because it's kind of trying to figure out when the next meeting would be of teaching and learning, and if we would have time to get it to the regular agenda. But I think it can go straight to the full board. Right, Mr. Testani, do you have any feelings about that?
I think we could bring it just to the board as a whole.
Yeah, you got my support anyway, and I think everybody else will be amenable to it. So
Yeah, I don't think anyone would be against it.
Our student ambassadors have been hard at work, so they're going to be super excited.
Awesome. Mr. Lombard, do you have any more questions?
No, thank you very much.
Ms. Allen?
I have no questions. I've been very well informed tonight on a lot of things that I did not know.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. I look forward to seeing not new things, but expanded things on scaled up things to continue working through the district for our students. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Mr. Lombard?
Yes, Mr. Planis, good evening. The next item on the agenda is a request for the purchase of a new mathematics program for grades 2 to 5 and 9 to 10. Take it away.
Great. So tonight I'm seeking approval for the adoption of the new textbooks in grade 2 to 5 and high school grades 9 through 10. Courses include algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. I have a short presentation if I may share that.
Yes, sir.
Let me just open it here real quick. Can you see that? Can you see my
Yes.
screen?
Yes.
Fantastic. So the rationale for this this ask is that currently the textbook licenses for grades 3 to 5, Math and Focus, have expired. We are currently using the hardbound textbooks as well as PDFs that we have created, and very much a lot of digital components that we have created in the math department, as well as the Engage New York program to supplement those grades. We also are utilizing the Greg Tang engine, which was a 1-year grant that we wrote. That is due to expire at the end of this year. So that's what we are using currently to teach through the pandemic in those grades. The textbook licenses for Algebra, Geometry, and Algebra 2 courses expire also at the end of the 2021 school year. And the actual textbook licenses, although the actual textbook licenses for grade 2 will expire at the end of next year, many of the key components, such as the assessment engine, also known as iReady, and the instructional acceleration program that we had previously have already expired. We want to have eventually a consistent textbook for all grades K through 8. And so currently we have 3 different textbooks in those grade levels. So our hope is that this will help in that path. And so eventually we will have, the goal is to have 1 textbook, but right now, in talking to Marlene Siegel, what we could do right now is grades 2 through 8. Last year, as you know, we adopted, can you see my PowerPoint?
No, it's not progressing. I don't know if you mean.
Not progressing? Okay, let me take a peek here.
There we
There
go.
we go. Now,
Okay.
okay.
I'm sorry. Last year, we adopted grade 6 through 8, the program called Into Math. And it's going fairly well. We do have, a lot more work to do in regards to ensuring that teachers are teaching with the essence of the program, which is using the concrete, pictorial, and abstract model. And so we see a lot of progress throughout. We see a lot of good things happening and a lot of improvement in those areas, but we still have some work to do in that regards. The program is going well so far. We have done a grade 3 to 5 pilot, which was implemented at 6 schools in Bridgeport. Batalla, Classical Studies, Bryant, Madison, Dunbar, and Columbus were the host sites for these pilots. And so we had teachers who were trained and used the Into Math program for these grade levels as well as WAGL. 4 workshops were presented to these teachers as part of this pilot. And we included the special ed and bilingual teachers because we wanted everyone to be trained. Specific sessions were also set up as the need came up. For example, in some schools, they asked us about more sessions on WAGL and also interpreting the assessment data that the package comes in with. And so we created those sessions for them through the HMH leadership. The results of the pilot showed an overall successful implementation and also a strong coherence with our current curriculum. So we were able to support the pilot very well because it lent very well to what we had already created. And so all we have to do is, if we move in this direction, which is what I'm proposing, all we have to do is tweak the current curriculum to ensure that the order of our units is similar to the one for the book. But for the most part, everything will fit perfectly. We do want to create some tweaks in our curriculum for the summer in terms of developing the project-based learning aspect of it in mathematics. So this will be a great addition, and this new program allows for that. It has various projects throughout each chapter. These teachers that utilize the program, the one thing that they like the most is the fact that there were a lot of electronic resources beyond the book that helped them get greatly through COVID teaching, through the teaching through the pandemic, and allowed them to really assess the student knowledge as well as teach electronically in a better way. It's a brand new program, and it allows to do many different things that we couldn't do 15 years ago when the Math in Focus, which was the previous program, was invented. So in order to create this path, we need a common program in K-8. As I mentioned before, we currently have 3 programs, and that's really not acceptable. I mean, it's very hard to upkeep and hard to maintain, and also because every program has very subtle differences, it will be great that is cohesive and seamless throughout, so that students, as they progress through the different programs and through the different curricula, they could have common language as well as common ways of doing things in mathematics. Again, as I mentioned before, the plan is to add grades 2 to 5 in this 21-22 school year, and also for the year after, grades K and 1, which is due to expire at the end of that year. So we will be able to have a cohesive program in the next few years. A pilot is already being talked about for grades K and 1 in preparation to that move. So we have already agreed on the pilot, as well as how many schools will be involved. We haven't chosen the schools yet, but we know that there's some schools that are actually working in mathematics in those buildings, and so I think we will start with those schools first. IT has also field tested all the devices in grades 2 to 5 in preparations for this implementation. Our committee was actually ready prior to January, but we wanted to ensure that all the program was tested throughout. So we wanted them to take their time and really make sure that everything we will be using will accept the program well. So they've given me the green light in that regards. The curriculum will be updated to meet the recommendations of the program during this summer. Any questions so far?
None for
No
me.
question.
Anybody else?
Got a few things here. So as you can see, the curriculum renewal plan. I went one step ahead. The curriculum renewal plan is to move into the next school year, the grades 2 to 5 for 6 years, and then we will look at K and 1 and see how many years we could propose the K and 1. And again, as Ms. Siegel asked me to ensure that this is subject to available resources, and that this plan can be modified slightly if the funding received is less than the estimated amount. So the cost of this program is $1.1 million, close to $1.2 million, and this will include 6-year licenses of the Into Math program, including all the electronic components. All the teachers' materials will be both in print as well as electronic, but teachers will receive the materials in print also. The books will be consumable, and for the 6 years, they will replenish as part of this buy. And we could use the WAGGLE program for all students in grades 2 to 5. All the professional development for the implementation of the program is also inclusive in this quote. And so, is this the place where I hold and wait for a motion, or any questions, or should I continue?
Yeah, I got a question, maybe a concern. As far as going out to bid, how do we handle that?
So because we wanted to bring the program down, and it's the only company that provides this one program, there's really no bidding. It's the only company that provides the program. So I'm not sure. I don't think we could bid on this one.
It's considered a
Yeah.
sole source.
So that would, yeah, I guess it's a sole source for specific needs. I just don't want us to get in trouble. I'm very happy with the Intermath program, but I'm just concerned about getting us into trouble. How does this compare to the number of units and all that stuff with the?
So, Mr. Sokolovic, if I could chime in on that question, last year we brought 3 providers, and part of the progress, the reason why we went with this book is because of the option to be able to do this, and so we went to bid last year when we first encountered this. We went into this project. And so at that time, we went to bid and we chose 3 programs. And then we went and spoke to the different vendors and we got the best bid possible. In this case, we are continuing with that project. So it's a little bit different than starting from scratch.
Right. And is it a similar?
I'd just like to know, excuse me, could I ask a question, please?
Yes,
I would just like to ask who purchases these books. Does the math department itself have someone there to purchase the books, or are they just generally contracted?
No, we basically Marlene Siegel and we discuss it with the different vendors. We discuss the price with the different vendors, and then the district makes a purchase for these books.
She makes the monetary contribution to that group, or who?
There's an allocation that comes from different sources. My understanding is some of it will be Title IV. I don't want to misspeak, so I don't know the exact location where she will be getting the different monies for this program. But in the past has been mostly Title IV because that's mostly mathematics. Mathematics come through Title IV.
I understand that, but my concern is that you had a book depository down there with 1 million books in it at one time. I don't know if it has been cleaned out or what. It was located on the school on Chopsy Hill Road.
Right. We no longer have that, unfortunately. Yeah.
You got rid of that.
Yeah. We cleaned that up actually possibly like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, prior to
I
me
know there was about 20 years of books there.
Yeah, there were a lot of great materials there. I remember that place very well. Unfortunately, we do not have that. Everything is site-based, and we basically order what we need. And for this purpose, we're going to order maybe 1 extra book for each class. And always what we do is if we need anything extra, we ask schools if they have extra, and we manage that way. But we're in a very tight budget. So.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Lombard, any questions on this point?
No, I remember last year when we moved toward this program. So yep.
How did we come up with price?
We basically looked at the figure from last year. This figure is pretty much alike the figure that was provided for us when we first bid for the program. We asked for the figure for the 3rd through 5th grade. And so all they did was they added also the 2nd grade to this figure. And it was very, very much comparable if you divide it evenly.
Okay, I'm gonna trust you on the math. You should have the math down.
Yes, sir. It's about $200,000 a year.
Okay, you can continue.
Good. So the next piece is basically the grades 9 and 10 mathematics textbooks, and that will be for the courses of algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. For this one, it's the first time that we do any textbook purchase, at least for the time that I've been around in the math in the last 5 years. So for this one, since it's the first time that we begin this process, we decided to go with a full committee from the 7 high schools. And so we had meetings from October 2020 to January 2021. This was composed of teachers representing all 7 high schools. So now that Fairchild Wheeler, their licenses are expiring, they are going to need books also. So we added all those 3 high schools into the mix. We created and reviewed a rubric using the textbook criteria that we had prior, and collected that information from various sources. Then narrowed down the list to 3 vendors from the 30 to 40 available according to materials that we currently had. So we started with 30, narrowed it down to 3, and those 3 then presented. And then we rated those 3. We tried those 3. We really looked down, to the different materials, and then from there we chose the top. We went to bid with those 3, and then we actually we got quotes from the 3, and then we chose the one that gave us the best quote. So in this case, we looked at the top 3 were one is illustrative mathematics. And in the past, you've seen the ed reports that I've shown. And so you could see that, like I said last year, these 3 have a lot of green. They have, it's rated very well in focus and coherence. It's very well in rigor and mathematical practice. And the usability rating is rated very well. So it meets the expectation of the Common Core. The second one that we looked at was the review of mathematics. Again, rated very well in all 3 areas. And so we were very happy with this one also. And the third one was Into AGA, which is really the continuation of the Into Math. And again, it's rated very well for all 3 areas. So when we took a look at the book, we used our rubric, and we basically ranked all these 3 books after we have tried them. So a month later, after we have seen the presentation, we ranked the different books, and here's how we came up with the top 3, how they ranked. Notice that the Into AGA had 67 of the 75 points. Reveal Mathematics was close by with 61 points. We noticed that one was lacking a little bit on the assessment piece, as well as some of the organization that the Into AGA had. They were missing some of the components, so it was ranked a little bit less. And in terms of mathematical content and the ability to make some changes as it came to some modifications within the program that we needed for special ed and bilingual students, that program came a little bit lacking than the others, according to our committee. The illustrative math came in much lower for many of the same reasons. So then we went into the cost negotiations. We spoke to the top 2 vendors and presented their best offer. Met with each one of them. We talked about all the necessary resources, and we basically asked for the final offer. We kept in mind the cost of updating our curriculum when we did this, because that there's a cost associated with hiring staff. And at the end, I communicated with the chief financial officer, and we came up with possibilities for securing funding. So here are the prices of the 2 top best final offers. So in our case was Into Math at almost $500,000, and Reveal Math a little bit higher. This included a 6-year license for the usage of the program for all 7 high schools, online access to the students and teachers' teacher books. We included, in the committee, we had a big discussion about the types of books that we wanted to use. And so, we know we needed some hardcover books, which are very expensive. And many of the teachers actually said that they weren't using their hardcover books because many of the students are using their computers or laptops. And so we talked about how to maximize the usage and not spend more money than what we needed to spend. So we talked about possibly buying one set of student textbooks per course per high school, so that we have some textbooks for students who might need them, and we will be able to give it to them. Although I will tell you, these programs have many features beyond the actual usage of the textbook. They have some graphing features that are superb, and that it doesn't do any justice just opening a book. I mean, it's beyond that. It's truly remarkable stuff what's coming out now. Professional development also was included in the implementation of this. So we chose the Into Math program, as you could tell. The price was, and by the way, it's called Into AGA. That's a typo. It should be Into AGA. AGA for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. The teachers thought that it was the one of the finest options is the fact that they could go down to 7th grade. They could go down 2 levels and use it for reteaching. They could have a coordination with the middle school. They like the features, although they were very close in features, to be honest with you, but they like the fact that, that it was very cohesive going up the grades. So I will stop here. I think that's my last slide. I would take any questions from you.
So yes, Mr. Flanagan, unlike the other one, this has no consumables?
They both have consumables. I think all of the programs that we've seen are now full. Wait, let me take that back. This is high school. So that the high schools are more hardcover still than the others. So we have to buy a hardcover book for both of these.
So students would have to do all their work either on paper or on program.
Paper program copies, if needed, or writing the computer if it's an interactive digital. I think most of the work could be done. There's some of the work that could be done interactively using the different tools that these programs now have. We did not have things like this even 10 years ago.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, one of my questions I've had in the past, students are not going to be copying down entire equations and spending time copying from the book into their
notebooks. You know how I feel about that, Mr. Sokolovic. So,
and that's what we get into with the hardcover books sometimes, and the non-consumables.
Definitely. As you know, I'm not in support of any copying of that sort. We will be very mindful of that when we get the program. Obviously, it's something that we will have to patrol and ensure it doesn't happen. I could tell you that the best feature that any of the new programs have is the ability for self-correction and data. That self-correction only comes after you have entered the information online. And so you don't have to do any copying per se. It's more about the understanding of the program. The other thing that actually the Into Math program has is the Into AGA is the fact that it connects to the conceptual, the concrete, the pictorial, and the abstract. So it allows you to use manipulatives at various levels that are digital, and then connect that to some kind of picture as you're doing math or as you're doing geometry. And then it brings that up to the abstraction, which is part of Common Core, is the root of Common Core. And both the Into Math and the Into AGA really do a good job at that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lombard?
No, I think it's great. The best one's the cheapest, so that's a good thing.
Ms. Allen?
No questions.
Okay, and you're requesting approval this evening, Mr. Flemish, correct?
I'm requesting approval for the plan, which includes the grades 2 to 5, as well as the high school grades 9 and 10, including the courses of algebra, geometry, and algebra 2.
Okay, that being said, entertain a motion to approve present to the full board the recommendation that we purchase the textbooks as presented for grades 2 to 5 and grades 9 to 10.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Planis. This should be on the next agenda. Mr. Testani, could you see to that, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that was the last item on the agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much. It's been a great meeting. Everybody's very appreciated, and everybody have a great night and be safe.
You too, Joe.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye-bye.